So I want to approach this with a little bit of sensitivity because this does not directly affect Marvel's Spider-Man 2. It actually affects another aspect, but then indirectly affects Spider-Man 2, but it just happens to be the subject of discussion because I think this exposes something bigger. You see, I've always said that gamers play favorites. Whenever it's a video game that they like, they're willing to ignore shortcomings or even problems that they may see. But when it's a video game they don't necessarily really like, then those shortcomings become some kind of a stopgap that prevents them from actually engaging with the game. Preference is fine. It's okay for the gamer to be able to say, I like this, this is what I'm going to go with. However, the problem that we're seeing and the problem that this particular article from GameRanks is highlighting is this is something that doesn't have to do with the gamer, but has to do with the review industry that has somewhat, put itself on some kind of a pedestal as this arbiter of objectivity, when in reality, that's not the case. So GameRanks' Ryan Pereno writes, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is the buggiest 2023 game with Metacritic's universal acclaim. Now, be very, very cautious when you read and interpret this article because it is saying that this is the game that has the most bugs that has received the universal acclaim status in Metacritic. I don't want anybody to come here and start saying, well, you see, no. Let's calm down. Let's not go crazy because we need to go ahead and read this article and see what the author's intention and the author's meaning is behind his title. So Ryan writes and says, we need to talk about how these bugs did not come up in review copies and why that matters. A few days after release, it has emerged that Marvel's Spider-Man 2 has some serious bugs and issues. Gamers who bought the disc cannot finish installation. I bought the disc. I was sweating bullets when I got to 35%. I was thinking, oh man, this is going to get me. It didn't get me, so it wasn't part of my experience. But nonetheless, people reported this, and we have to also take it into account. Allegedly, players using a disc get stuck installing the game at 36%. Subsequently, gamers cannot install the game to their SSD. I think probably their external SSD. In these cases, it's advised to store the game in Sony PlayStation 5's memory. Some gamers cannot change performance and fidelity modes. These issues may resolve after the first mission. Finally, there are cases of game crashing or overheating, which may be causing the consoles need cleaning. I guess it's supposed to be cleaning. Over on Twitter, ACG, aka Jeremy Penter made this observation about the growing reports of bugs. He says, I feel very comfortable now saying Spider-Man 2 Day Zero patch, Elden Ring Day Zero, and Hunter Simulator Day Zero are all part of a particular very small set that have induced more bugs or perf issues in their games. I've brought this up many times on the podcast that it can happen, but it's rare. However, this is 100% for sure a thing with Spider-Man 2. Been testing all night. ACG in his review, to his own credit, did mention that there were few bugs in the game. I remember going at the end of his video where he talks about the pros and cons. He puts it up there. I didn't listen to the whole review because for some reason I just wanted to just get the short and sweet. That's usually how I listen to, the reviews I'm actually interested in listening to these days. I'm not really big on them because I remember that many of them were not meticulous enough and they lied about Gotham Knights. That's a whole different story. We'll visit it here in a little bit. Don't worry. And so he goes ahead and interviews 3 of his friends. I remember making a video where I talked about this and they all said, yeah, well, out of the 3 of them, I think 2 of them or 3 of them said that, well, 2 of them confirmed that they had some bugs. And then Dark1X, aka John Linneman of Digital Foundry, supported Jeremy's assertion. He says, yep, I played a bunch today, had multiple bugs that never occurred during the review period. Let's keep reading because I want to make sure that, we're all seeing this, right? And this is in white scale. So I'm going to go back and put it on reader mode because this scale just is insane. Yeah. And then it says menu stop pausing the game, no menu sound effects, suit effects getting stuck, asset loading hiccups, missing rain sound, restarted, they fixed it. Very unusual. Like you say, it happened before. While it does seem that these issues did not affect most players' experience of the game, there needs to be a conversation about these issues. And no, this isn't about console wars. Marvel Spider-Man 2 received a 91 Metacritic score from 150 critic reviews. That gives it the distinction of receiving universal acclaim from said reviewers. However, these review scores are not based on the version of the game that some players received, and that's a problem. Remember, Metacritic is more than some award or medal that the industry gets to brag about. Game developers can lose their jobs or see their bonuses and pay cut if their project does not get the Metacritic their employer is aiming for. This is not a fair system at all, but if we're to follow these rules arbitrarily set by the industry, we have to at least try to make it as fair as possible. And it would not be fair that Marvel Spider-Man 2 receives a citation for universal acclaim when it clearly was not that experience for everyone. It wouldn't be fair to other developers who saw their games receive lower metascores and were penalized for it in real material terms. It also isn't fair to those gamers who literally cannot install or play the game. The fact that the game players got is not what reviewers received is a red flag that the reviews aren't accurate or helpful to the gamers as consumers. We understand that games can be great in spite of bugs, that bugs can be fixed in time, that game development is unpredictable. But if we talk about a system which determines who gets paid and who has to leave the industry, it should not be set up to favor some studios over others for arbitrary reasons. For this reason, we have to call out that Marvel Spider-Man 2 is the buggiest game to receive Metacritic's universal acclaim moniker. With many 10/10 scores, the scores were based on a different game than what the consumers got, and we have to question if that's really acceptable. So this article kind of points out what I think is a problem overall, because the review economy is a very interesting place. Because I'm certain that probably when they gave these review copies, there were mentions of, there might be these bugs or these little issues that you might eventually face and so on and so forth. And, that's what the reviews actually highlighted. This article is not going as far as to saying that, but even if they say it's a different game, I think they're being nice. I think they're being somewhat cordial, because what other version of the game did people play anyways? I mean, I'm wondering, because I remember that when people were going after Gotham Knights, it wasn't necessarily about all of the bugs. It was more for preference, and people did leave Warner Brothers Montreal after this game was released, by the way. For some of you who may or may not know, because of the extreme nitpicking of what I think is a good game, a remarkable game in my opinion, just one that a lot of people thought that they didn't want. They wanted the Arkham games, pushy, pushy, punchy, punchy, and all of that stuff. I get it. That's preference. That's player preference. But at the end of the day, there has to be the objectivity that is looked at when it comes to the review economy. And a lot of gamers actually depend on reviewers to be able to, make some, or at least influence the decisions, or maybe confirm what it is that they've kind of sensed about a video game before they make a purchasing decision. I say this. At this point in time, gamers have to start looking at possibly preparing for video games that they're interested in. You see, we're grown now. The gaming demographics is no longer the little kid. Most gaming demographics is anywhere from 35 to 65. The Division and the Division 2, its demographics is very, very, very mature gamers, much older than your average, say, superhero games. Like, your Spider-Man games, sure, they may appeal to some people in those demographics, but really, the OG gamer is, in their 20s, and I'm talking about their mid-20s all the way to 65. So these are people who have, the capacity to be able to plan, to be able to approach things differently, and the capacity to be able to make those decisions. So I strongly believe that if you want to play a video game and you're interested in that video game, it might make sense for you to just save up money and let it be money that you consider disposable income, so that you can basically test out and check a game for yourself, even after the reviews have already been come out, so that, you're not in a place where you feel like, oh man, I feel cheated because I wasn't given this information when I made the purchasing decision. Because I guarantee you, even from the videos that I've made and I've talked about, there are people who have come out and say, this game is actually preventing me from any progress that I have. Like, they can't continue the game. I don't remember Gotham Knights having any such progression bugs in any sense where I had to restart the game because the game bugged out. There was no such thing. And I've even seen people, like, I remember on Twitter just, a few hours ago, I saw a tweet from someone who said, man, I really love Spider-Man and I enjoy it, but the bugs that have actually prevented me from, playing the game, and you guys gave, Gotham Knights a hard time. I saw a tweet like that and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Here it is. I'm enjoying Spider-Man 2, but the bugs, and people were pooping on Gotham Knights. I didn't run into this many bugs with Gotham Knights, and it is again one of those things where people hyper nitpicked a lot of Gotham Knights. Now people may come out and say, well, Gotham Knights' problem was not the bugs. I know, but that's player preference. However, with Spider-Man and the bugs, what we're seeing is that the review economy in the press didn't say anything. And I know Sony and PlayStation has had a huge influence on the gaming scene for a long time. I think this is probably a testament to the bias that we've seen and how that bias has been, in a sense, reflected, in this particular game. And like I said, this doesn't, affect Spider-Man directly, but indirectly it does, because Spider-Man just happens to be the subject of discussion. So I commend, Game Ranks for going on to write this article. I would hope that their Before You Buy actually, highlighted this. I haven't seen their Before You Buy on Spider-Man 2. They usually do one. That's kind of like their unofficial review that they usually do. So I'll go back and watch it, and maybe I'll join you guys in the comment section and I'll say if they actually mentioned it. But I thought this article needs to be, highlighted based on its merits, because the author of this article may also be different from whoever did the Before You Buy as well. Sometimes Jake Baldino, I think, is the only one who does the Before You Buys. And Ryan is writing this article probably independent of, what the Before You Buy had shown. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.